The Horizon Dawn, a sleek Terran Union diplomatic vessel, hummed with quiet efficiency as it approached the massive orbital station of V'Lirith, capital of the V'Ashar Empire. The station, a sprawling lattice of blackened alloys and shimmering energy conduits, loomed against the void, its age impossible to fathom. Inside the ship's bridge, Captain Mara Kate adjusted the cuffs of her dark blue uniform. Her posture was relaxed, but her amber eyes flicked between the monitor displays with a sharpness that never dulled. Years of command had trained her well. Diplomatic missions always carried the possibility of disaster. "Almost there," said Dr. Ravi Patel, the ship's engineer, running one last diagnostic on their translation software. "We should probably brace for a few centuries' worth of condescension." Yeah. Elliot Sparks Jones muttered from his seat, where he was absent-mindedly spinning a stylus between his fingers. "Gotta love a species that thinks living forever means they know everything." Anika Zhao, the team's xenocultural specialist, shot him a look. "We're here to establish diplomacy, not start a fight." Sparks grinned. "I can do both." Mara sighed. "Let's try to make it through the first meeting without causing an interstellar incident." With a deep, resonant hum, the docking clamps engaged and the airlock cycled open with a hiss. Two V'Ashar envoys awaited them, tall and lean, their elongated forms clad in flowing robes woven with iridescent threads. Their faces were unsettlingly smooth, and their black, reflective eyes shimmered as they regarded the humans with what could only be described as mild amusement. The lead envoy inclined his head. "I am High Scholar Zirith. It is fascinating to meet a species so fleeting." Sparks barely suppressed an eye roll. "Here we go." The V'Ashar's arrogance. The humans were escorted through sprawling marble corridors to the main hall of the Eternal Conclave, where a congregation of V'Ashar scholars, officials, and nobles awaited them. The chamber's vaulted ceilings glowed softly, bathed in light emitted from crystalline panels. Zirith took his place before the assembly, extending a skeletal hand. "We welcome the Terran Union," he declared, his voice a slow, deliberate melody. "Though it is rare that we entertain a species as ephemeral as yours." Mara folded her arms but kept her expression neutral. "Humanity is honored by the invitation." Zirith smiled, an odd, unsettling gesture. "We have observed your kind's remarkable ambition. How curious it must be to exist in such brief moments, to grasp at knowledge, knowing you will not live to see its full fruition." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled V'Ashar. Anika cleared her throat, stepping forward. "Lifespans alone don't determine the worth of a civilization. It's what we do with our time that matters." Ziritha's smile widened, spoken like a creature desperate to outrun its own mortality. Sparks leaned over to Ravi, whispering, "I swear, if he pats us on the head, I'm hacking their entire archive just for fun." Ravi bit back a chuckle. The threat unveiled. As the discussion continued, the humans quickly realized the V'Ashar's arrogance ran deep. They spoke of younger civilizations as mere footnotes in the grand expanse of history, stepping stones toward their own endless perfection. It was Anika who first noticed a shift in tone. "We have endured countless millennia," Zirith continued, "by ensuring the lesser species do not disrupt the harmony of the cosmos." Mara's expression darkened. "What do you mean by that?" Zirith gestured with elegant ease. "Do you not wonder why so many civilizations flicker and fade? We prune the flawed, the chaotic, the unstable. It is the duty of the long-lived to maintain order." A silence stretched between them. Ravi exhaled slowly. "You exterminate entire species?" Zirith tilted his head. "Would you rather the universe be left to uncontrolled entropy?" Mara's fist clenched. "And humanity? What do you intend for us?" Ziritha's voice was as smooth as ever. You, unfortunately, pose a particular dilemma. You are young and erratic, but undeniably resourceful." He turned to the assembly. "And so, we have debated whether to integrate you as servants to a greater cause, or remove your kind before you become a threat." The casual cruelty in his words sent a chill through the humans. Sparks exhaled sharply. "I vote we be a real big threat, then." Mara's mind raced. Diplomacy had just shattered into something else entirely. She smiled tightly. "I see. And how long do we have before you make that decision? Xerath gave the smallest shrug. Oh, we have all the time in the universe. Mara glanced at her crew. Then it's a good thing we don't. A plan takes shape. As soon as they were escorted back to their chambers, Mara rounded on her team. Well, Sparks said, dropping onto a couch. That went great. Ravi ran a hand through his hair. We're dealing with an empire that's had 10,000 years to entrench itself in power. We can't fight them conventionally. Anika nodded. They won't expect us to be unpredictable. They believe their longevity gives them inherent superiority. Sparks smirked. So, let's prove that thinking wrong. Mara crossed her arms, thinking fast. We need to get into their archives. Find weaknesses, historical patterns, anything we can use. If they think we're nothing but impulsive, short-lived creatures, we should play right into it. Spark stretched. Oh, I love playing dumb. Best con ever. Ravi shook his head. They won't underestimate us for long. Then we move fast, Mara said, because if they think we're just brief, inconsequential flashes in history. She smiled, sharp and dangerous. Then they're about to find out just how much damage a single spark can ignite. The walls of their assigned quarters pulsed with an eerie, bioluminescent glow. There were no visible cameras, but Mara had no doubt the VHR were watching. The empire that had survived for millennia had little reason to trust a species that solved problems in days. Mara turned to her team. We need to act fast. The VHR see us as a mild curiosity, but that won't last. Sparks kicked his feet onto a sleek, floating console. We playing the long con or the short con? Ravi glanced around the room. Given their arrogance, they're probably not guarding their systems as well as they should. Their technologies evolved slowly over thousands of years. They won't expect an attack in minutes. Anika sat cross-legged on the floor, already pulling up ancient texts on her handheld. We should start by understanding their weaknesses. Civilizations this old don't just last, they calcify. The question is, where... Mara nodded. Sparks. Find a way into their systems. Ravi. Start looking for any major infrastructure weaknesses. Anika. If there's a historical precedent for a challenge like this, I want to know about it. Sparks cracked his knuckles. Oh, I'm going to have so much fun. Cracks in the foundation. Hours passed. The VHR had granted them access to a limited knowledge database, likely assuming no human would be able to comprehend their vast history. They were wrong. Got something, Ravi said, dragging a hollow display into the center of the room. VHR technology? Flawless. Their systems? Perfectly optimized. He grinned. But their software architecture? Hot garbage. Sparks leaned forward. Explain. They don't adapt their technology the way we do. Their software is built on code that's tens of thousands of years old. Layered patches upon patches. They never throw anything out. Mara smirked. Because they don't have to. Exactly, Ravi said. And because of that, their AI is too rigid. It doesn't handle unexpected input well. Sparks grinned. Which means we can break it by being gloriously unpredictable. Mara crossed her arms. If we can get into their deeper systems, we can do more than just disrupt things. We can rewrite the narrative. Psychological warfare. While Ravi and Sparks worked on infiltration, Anika dug through ancient VHR records. What she found sent a chill through her. They have struggled before, she murmured, eyes scanning the glowing text. Not with war, with unpredictability. Mara looked up. What do you mean? Anika shifted the display. There were species before us, rare ones that adapted too quickly, creatures that didn't follow the expected patterns. The VHR tried to subdue them, but they failed. Every time. Sparks leaned in. So what happened to those species? Anika hesitated. They vanished. Silence settled over the room. Mara exhaled. Then we don't give them the chance to decide our fate. She turned to Sparks. Can you make them think there's something about humans they can't control? Sparks' grin was almost feral. Oh, absolutely. Let's introduce them to the concept of chaos. The first strike. The plan was simple. Seed confusion, cause disruptions, and make the VHR question their assumptions. Spark started by injecting random, nonsensical data streams into the station's information network. Their hyperlogical AIs struggled to process the sheer irrationality of human input. Let's see how they handle contradictory orders, paradox loops, and just nonsense. Sparks typed rapidly, inputting commands that made no sense. Mara watched as control panels across the room flickered, VHR symbols distorting. Error code scrolled rapidly. Ravi whistled. That was fast. It's like kicking a rock slide loose, Spark said, grinning. Give them a second. The panic's coming. The VHR react. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a sudden shift in station lighting. The soft, ambient glow flickered, hesitated, then flared too brightly before dimming. Seconds later, the doors sealed shut. Well, that's not good, Anika said. Mara tapped her communicator. Horizon Dawn report. Static. Spark smirked. Guess we got their attention. The chamber doors slid open, revealing High Scholar Zereth. His expression remained placid, but there was a tightness around his lips that hadn't been there before. You have been active, Zereth said slowly, stepping inside. A species as young as yours should not possess such recklessness. Mara met his gaze without flinching. We prefer the term innovative. Zereth studied her for a moment. Your existence presents a puzzle. The VHR do not fear lesser beings. And yet you are a disruption. That's kind of our thing, Spark said. Zereth continued, his voice smooth as glass. Your kind believes in the fleeting nature of existence. But what you fail to grasp is that time itself is our greatest ally. You will not outlast us. Mara stepped forward. You keep saying that, but we don't need to outlast you. We just need to be smarter than you. Zereth tilted his head. A species that thinks in years cannot match those who think in millennia. Mara smiled. You'd be surprised what we can do with 5 minutes. Escalation. Mara knew they had limited time before the VHR adjusted to their tactics. We need to push harder, she said once Zereth left. Sparks cracked his knuckles. So we go full pandemonium? Ravi pulled up schematics of the station. We hit their infrastructure. This whole empire is built on the idea that time is always on their side. What if for once it wasn't? Anika nodded. They expect slow, methodical approaches. If we keep shifting tactics faster than they can predict, they won't be able to stop us. Mara exhaled. Then let's give them something they've never had before, a crisis they don't have time to solve. Sparks grinned. I love this plan. The turning point. As the team got to work, alarms blared across via Lyrith. Sparks had looped their security feeds. Ravi had rerouted power from key station systems. And Anika had inserted false historical records into their archives, records that implied humanity was far older and far more dangerous than the VHR realized. As chaos erupted, a single message flashed across the VHR network. Humanity cannot be predicted. Humanity cannot be controlled. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the VHR felt something new. Doubt. Mara watched the station descend into confusion and smiled. This, she murmured, is just the beginning. The VHR empire had endured for over 10,000 years. It had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. It had never encountered anything like humanity. Now, its greatest minds stood paralyzed before something utterly foreign to them. Chaos. The corridors of Via Lyrith pulsed with frantic energy. Scholars whispered in hushed, uneasy tones, their serene confidence shattered by the impossible disruptions cascading through the station systems. For the first time in recorded history, VHR protocols failed to account for a variable. That variable was humanity. Doubt in the halls of the eternal. Deep in the core of the station, High Scholar Zereth stood in the chamber continuum, surrounded by towering crystalline data obelisks that recorded every decision, every decree, every carefully measured step of the VHR empire. These records were infallible. They dictated the natural progression of order. And yet, Zereth watched as one of the obelisks flickered. Entire segments of historical data were corrupted with erratic human inserts. Unpredictable, unstable, uncontrollable. A scholar beside him, Valeth, trembled. They are an anomaly, she whispered. The record suggests they should not have advanced as quickly. They have altered our archives. Zira said, his voice betraying the faintest waver. "They have rewritten the truth." "The humans are young," Vela said, "yet they have done in hours what no species has in centuries." For the first time, Zira felt something alien to him. Doubt. Meanwhile, in the heart of the station, Mara, Sparks, Ravi, and Anika moved quickly through the station's lower sectors, where security was light. Their plan was working. Too well. The VA Shar were in disarray, unsure how to counter an enemy that refused to act logically. "We're deep enough," Ravi said, scanning the schematics he'd extracted from the station's archives. "If we can access one of their core command nodes, we might be able to trigger a chain reaction, overload their data architecture, force a total system reset." Mara nodded. "Sparks." He grinned. "Oh, I can definitely break an ancient, overcomplicated, self-important system." He held up his wrist console. "We just need to plug me in." Anika glanced around. "I don't like this. The VA Shar should have locked this place down by now." As if on cue, a voice echoed through the chamber. "You do not belong here." The humans turned to see a contingent of VA Shar enforcers, their elongated forms moving with eerie precision. But unlike before, there was something different in their stance. They weren't confident. They were uncertain. Zira stepped forward, his dark, reflective eyes narrowing. "You have forced a disruption, one we have not encountered in millennia." Mara stood firm. "Yeah, we do that." Zira studied them for a long moment. "Tell me, Captain Cade, do you believe that disorder can triumph over stability?" Mara smirked. "No, but adaptability will always beat stagnation." For a second, Zira said nothing. Then, to the human surprise, he exhaled slowly. A VA Shar gesture of reluctant acknowledgement. "You cannot be controlled. That much is evident." Ziritha's gaze flickered to the flickering displays. "The question is, what happens now?" Mara glanced at her team. Then she grinned. "Well," she said, "that depends on you." The impossible choice. The station trembled as Sparks' infiltration reached critical levels. "If I push this command through," he said, "it won't just reset their systems. It'll erase centuries of stored historical data." Ziritha's eyes darkened. "That is unacceptable." Mara folded her arms. "Then you have a choice. Learn to evolve, or watch your empire collapse under its own weight." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Zirith exhaled again. For the first time, the VA Shar hesitated before history. Zirith stood motionless, his dark, reflective eyes unreadable. Around him, the luminous walls of Illyrith pulsed erratically, an external sign of the deep uncertainty infecting the VA Shar Empire. For the first time in millennia, Mara and her team held their ground. The station trembled beneath their feet as Sparks' infiltration pushed the ancient system to its limits. One final command would trigger a cascading failure, a reset so absolute that the VA Shar might never recover their once unquestionable dominance. And yet, Zirith had not ordered their execution. He had not demanded their immediate containment, because for the first time, the VA Shar faced something they could not quantify. Doubt. Mara stepped forward. "You have a choice," she said, voice steady. "Let us walk out of here, and you learn to adapt, or we reset everything, and your empire falls apart in its own confusion." Ziritha's fingers twitched, a sign of internal conflict. "You misunderstand," he murmured. "The VA Shar do not fear loss. We have withstood the erosion of time itself. If our empire crumbles, it will be rebuilt. Order always reasserts itself." Spark scoffed. "Yeah, maybe. But this won't be a slow decline you can control. This will be instantaneous." He gestured to the flickering screens. "Everything you know? Gone." Ziritha's gaze flickered to the failing data obelisks, their pristine surfaces now marred by human unpredictability. The universe had always bent to the VA Shar's will. Now, for the first time, it was breaking away from their grasp. He exhaled slowly, and then impossibly he bowed his head, the pact of uncertainty. "You demand that we change," Zira said, his voice measured. "Yet you do not understand the weight of what you ask." Mara raised an eyebrow. "Enlighten me." Zira straightened. "The VA Shar have survived because we do not rush forward blindly. We calculate. We refine. We do not make rash choices. Yeah, Ravi muttered. And look where that got you. Zirith continued as if he hadn't heard. To alter our way of being is to risk cataclysm. If we adapt too quickly, we lose what preserved us for millennia. Mara studied him. And if you don't adapt? Zirith hesitated. A tremor passed through his hands. A sign of uncertainty. A sign of change. Finally he spoke. We will let you go, he said, voice slow, deliberate, on one condition. Mara tensed. Name it. Zirith locked eyes with her. Teach us. Silence settled over the chamber. Mara had expected resistance, retaliation, even surrender. But this? Anika was the first to break the stunned quiet. Wait, you want us to, what? Give you a crash course in human unpredictability. Zirith exhaled. You have infected the great Vieshar order with uncertainty. If we do not understand it, we will not survive it. His gaze sharpened. You have already rewritten our records. Now, you must help us rewrite ourselves. Mara exchanged glances with her team. Sparks looked bemused, Ravi intrigued, and Anika almost awestruck. Then Mara grinned. All right, Zirith, we'll teach you. She gestured to the station around them. But first, let's get the hell out of here before your systems decide to implode. A future unwritten. With Zirith's reluctant blessing, the humans were escorted not as prisoners, but as guests, back to their ship. Vieshar scholars whisper among themselves. Watching the humans leave was something dangerously close to curiosity. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Vieshar had encountered something beyond their control, and they had chosen to embrace it. As the horizon dawn lifted off from Vielirith, Sparks leaned back in his seat, stretching with a contented sigh. Well, that was a hell of a thing. Ravi smirked. I still can't believe they actually asked us to teach them. Anika shook her head in wonder. This could change everything. Mara stared at the fading outline of the station, her expression thoughtful. It already has. The universe had always belonged to the oldest, the most stable, the most predictable. But that was before humanity, before the species that could thrive in uncertainty. And now, even the Vieshar had begun to understand. The future no longer belonged to those who lived the longest. It belonged to those who could change.